everybody out there, can we please just stop for a couple of days? I don't know what it is about right now and this week, but everybody wants to announce something at this very moment. I've made my videos for the week. There's a Firefox PWA video on the pipeline. There's a video on the Wayland HDR protocol being merged. And can we just wait until Monday until anybody else announces anything? Literally, as I started recording this, Cassidy released this. GNOME should kick the foot to the curb, mostly talking about changing the GNOME logo. I'll get to that in another video, but the reason why I say all of this is because this was also released, passing the torch on Asahi Linux. Just a few days back, I covered the Rust Linux drama in this video. A major focus of that was on Hector Martin, the founder and then leader of the Asahi Linux project. Now, for full context, please do go and watch that video. I'm not going to rehash everything here, but the TLDR is there was a maintainer who wasn't a fan of Rust, or at least isn't a fan of Rust in the kernel, and was blocking Rust additions to the thing that he was working on, that being DMA. Then Hector wasn't exactly a fan of this and didn't like the way he communicated, so they fought. They fought, and they fought some more. Hector fought with some other people, and there was lots of fighting. Linus stepped in and basically said he didn't really like the way that Hector was approaching this and didn't want there to be social media brigading in the kernel project, which is totally fair. The fighting continued, and then Hector decided, well, this isn't going to change, and decided to remove himself as a maintainer in the kernel, leaving Sven Peter, the co-maintainer of the Apple branch, to basically do it himself. Sven then brought on a new maintainer, that being Jan Grunau, who is now his co-maintainer. Now, I had expected things to just continue like this, with Sven and Jan doing the upstream work, and then Hector doing work on the downstream. But alas, it is, what time is it right now? It is 5:37 PM on a Friday, and I'm recording a video, passing the torch on Asahi Linux. With a heavy heart, we announce the resignation of Asahi Linux founder Hector Martin. His statement is on his blog. We will go and have a look at that in a moment. It's less of a statement and more like an essay. So, yeah. Asahi Linux brings Linux to Apple Silicon, supporting audio, webcams, graphics acceleration, and more. As the remaining developers, we are taking this as an opportunity to build sustainable project governance. No matter how talented an individual, a large project cannot rest on a single person's shoulders. So instead of one replacement, we have 7. None of these are new people on the project. They've all been very active contributors. Asahi Linux relies primarily on volunteer contributors. Although some contributors have individual Patreon or GitHub sponsor accounts, individual funding streams cannot sustain a team. Going forward, our new fiscal sponsor, Open Source Collective, will instead facilitate donations to the project as a whole. I have absolutely no idea why they weren't already doing this. So what can you look forward to in 2025? Our priority is kernel upstreaming. Our downstream Linux tree contains over 1,000 patches required for Apple Silicon that are not yet in upstream Linux. The upstream kernel moves fast, requiring us to constantly rebase our changes on top of upstream while battling merge conflicts and regressions. Jan, Neil, and Markin have rebased our tree for years, but it is laborious with so many patches. Before adding more, we need to reduce our patch stack to remain sustainable long term. We cannot predict how the process will go, but we are committed to do our part. And the other sustainability issue is testing. We must ensure that every supported feature works on all supported hardware, with no regressions over time. This is a very important part. You don't want it to get worse as you go further. As we support more features and hardware, the testing requirements explode. Unfortunately, manual testing is time-intensive and bugs still slip through. The solution is continuous integration that automatically tests Asahi Linux on many devices. Like upstreaming, building this infrastructure is not glamorous, but it will protect the project's long-term health. Just so we are crystal clear, because I know someone is going to try and misunderstand this. Even with Hector stepping away from the project, Asahi Linux is not dead. It's lost a core developer, but the project is still continuing on. So let's go over to Hector's post. Let's go back to the top. Resigning as Asahi Linux project lead. Back in the late 2000s, I was a major contributor to the Wii homebrew scene. I was passionate about my work and the team I was a part of, Team Tweezers, later Fail Overflow. Despite that, I ended up burning out, primarily due to the large fraction of entitled users. Most people using our software just wanted to play pirated games, something we did not support, condone, or directly enabled. No matter what you do, this is always going to happen. Anytime you provide something for other people, there are going to be people that expect a lot more. As newer game consoles were released, I ended up focusing on Linux ports purely for fun, and didn't attempt to build a community nor work on the jailbreak/exploits that would end up becoming a tool used by pirates. If you want a very long and very deep read, go and look at Hector's history in the homebrew scene, in the hacking scene. There is a lot there. Hector's been around for a very, very long time, and a lot of things that you probably had no idea he was involved in, you'll find his name somehow attached. When Apple released the M1, I realized that making a run Linux was my dream project. The technical challenges were the same as my console homebrew projects of the past, in fact, much bigger. But this time, the platform was already open. There was no need for a jailbreak, and no drama and entitled users who want to pirate software to worry about. He did not realize there would be different kinds of entitled users, and running Linux on M1 was a much bigger deal than running it on a PS4. I launched the Asahi Linux project and received an immense amount of support and donations. Incredibly, I had the support I needed to make the project happen just a few days after my call to action, so I got to work. I remember when this happened. I remember when this project was first announced, and I remember early on, there was a lot of skepticism saying, oh, well, you're never going to get this working, you're never going to get that working. I think a big one was GPU drivers. Before GPU drivers were a thing, people were like, oh, no, you can't get GPU drivers working. How are you gonna get a GPU working? I guess everybody just forgot that there were open source NVIDIA drivers not made by NVIDIA, so people reverse engineering GPUs is not like a new concept. But as things got better and better and better and better, I was really impressed where this project was going. Like, when it was first announced, I didn't know who Hector was. I didn't know, like, where this was really going to go, but it's come a long way. Unfortunately, things became less fun after a while. First, there were issues upstreaming code to the Linux kernel, which I've already spoken at length about, and I won't repeat here. It's not just the stuff that recently happened. There was the Wedson stuff. There's been a bunch of other smaller cases. Basically, rust in the kernel is effectively on life support. Like, stuff is getting merged, but there's a lot of stuff where there's a lot of pushback in merging it. But then they came. The entitled users. This time, it wasn't about stealing games, it was about features. When is Thunderbolt coming? Asahi is useless to me until I can use monitors over USB-C. The battery life sucks compared to macOS. I can't even check my CPU temperature. Yes, I seriously got that one. And of course, when is M3/M4 support coming? Now, it's one thing to ask about it, right? But what you have to remember is, whilst you're one person asking about it, and from your perspective, you've only asked once, from the other side, from the dev's perspective, this is something they've probably been asked tens or hundreds of times. You're just another voice asking it. No matter how much we did, how many impossible feats we pulled off, people always wanted more and more. Meanwhile, donations and pledges kept slowly decreasing and have done so since the project launch. Not enough to spell immediate doom for my dream of working on Asahi Linux full time in the short term, but enough to make me wonder if any of this was really appreciated. The all-time peak monthly donation volume was the very first month or two. It seems the more things we accomplished, the less support we had. This is very much like an idea known as the MMO paradox. The less someone knows about your project, the more excited they are going to be. The more you know, the more it can do, the more it can be criticized. If people don't know anything about it, if it can't do anything yet, people are excited. But that excitement drains very quickly when they see the state that things are actually in. I knew burnout was a very real risk and managed this by limiting my time spent on certain areas, such as kernel upstreaming. This worked reasonably well and was mostly suitable at the time. I did make some progress in 2024, but this left me in a vulnerable position. I hadn't gotten nearly as much work done as I'd liked, and the users weren't getting any quieter about demanding more features and machine support. And here we have a bunch of things that were worked on over that time, things like drivers and all that fun stuff. The issues Rust Linux has had surviving an upstream Linux project are well documented, so I won't repeat them in detail here. Suffice it to say, I consider Linus's handling of the integration of Rust into Linux a major failure of leadership. Such a large project needs significant support from major stakeholders to survive, while his approach seems to have been to just wait and see. Meanwhile, multiple subsystem maintainers downstream of him have done their best to stonewall or hinder the project, issue unacceptable verbal abuse, and generally hurt morale with no consequence. Whilst I don't agree with the way that Hector went about this, I do agree that Linus sort of just sitting back, I got my hands off, you guys, do whatever you need to do. That's not working. It's not working, and I don't think that's going to get any better if you just keep sitting around. As you know, this is deeply personal to me, as we made a bet on Rust Linux for Asahi, not just for fun, or just for memory safety either. Rust is the entire reason our GPU drive was able to succeed in the time it did. We have 2 more Rust drivers in our downstream tree now, and a third one on track to be written from C to Rust, because Rust is simply much better suited to the unique challenges we face, and the C driver is becoming unmaintainable. Some might be wondering why we can't just let the Rust situation play out on its own over a longer period of time, perhaps several years, and simply maintain things downstream until then. One reason is that, of course, the situation is hurting developer morale in the present. This also leads to just generally less people involved in the project, less work being done, and of course, less funding coming in, which is already becoming an issue. Another is that our Apple GPU driver is itself major evidence that Rust Linux is fit for purpose. It was the first big driver to be written from scratch in Rust and brought along with it lots of development in the Rust kernel abstractions. Simply not aiming for upstream might be seen as a lack of interest and hurt the chances of survival of the Rust for Linux effort. And that's also true. When Apple released the M1, Linus Torvalds wished it could run Linux, but didn't have hope it would ever happen. We made it happen, and Linux 5.19 was released on the M2 MacBook Air running Asahi Linux. I had hoped his enthusiasm would translate to some support for our community and help with our upstreaming struggles. Sadly, that never came to pass. In November 2023, I sent him an invitation to discuss the challenges of kernel contributions and maintenance and see how we could help. He never replied. Now, Linus is a busy person. I would have reached out multiple times then. Hopefully Hector did, but I can completely understand how if you tried once, that would be missed. When I started Asahi Linux, I let it take over most of my life. I gave up most of my hobbies. After all, this was my dream hobby, and spent significantly more than full time working on the project. It was fun back then, but it's not fun anymore. I have an M3 Pro in a box, and I haven't even turned it on. I dread doing the bring up work, and it doesn't feel worth the trouble. I miss having free time where I can relax and not worry about the features we haven't shipped yet. I miss making music, I miss attending jam sessions, I miss going out for dinner with my friends and family and not having to worry about how much we haven't upstreamed. I miss being able to sit down and play a game or watch a movie without feeling guilty. I want to thank the entire Asahi Linux team, without whom I would have never gotten anywhere alone. You all know who you are. I also give my utmost gratitude to all my Patreon and GitHub sponsors who made the project a viable reality to begin with. And also, if anyone is hiring, he is looking for a job. This is a mess. It really is. And I thought Hector was just gonna, take a break. Because frankly, that needed to happen. At a bare minimum, Hector needed to step away, maybe like a month or two, go and do literally anything else, and then come back. And maybe that'll happen, right? There's no saying that Hector now can't come back to the project. I didn't think it would go this far, but, I guess, sometimes people just leave. I don't have anything better to say there. I really don't. Like, this was a giant mess of a situation, and I don't expect things to get better with Rust for Linux and the kernel, but, hey, it is currently 6:24 p.m. here, so I'm gonna edit this video and, probably go to the gym and then get some food, and, yeah. Please don't upload any more blog posts, anyone. I'm watching you. I'm not gonna record a video over the weekend, but I'm watching you. Anyway, that's going to be it for me. So if you liked the video, go like the video. And if you really liked the video and you want to become one of these amazing people over here, check out the Patreon, Scribes, and Bear Pay linked in the description down below. That's going to be it for me, and let me rest.